Welcome back. Lawyers acting for the three convicted Marache brothers were this week denied extra funding for their appeal by the Supreme Court. The government has not yet revealed the cost of the fraud trial in the Supreme Court, but even before the appeal is accounted for, GBC understands the running total is already millions of pounds.
Last month, a judge hearing Gibraltar's longest ever criminal trial sentenced Benjamin Marache to 11 years in prison and Solomon and Isaac Marache to 7 years. They were found guilty of conspiracy to defraud millions of pounds pertaining to clients of the collapsed law firm Marache & Co. Lawyers representing the bankrupt Marache brothers are appealing the court's decision, and they've applied for legal aid. The brothers already received financial support from the government to the tune of millions of pounds for the Supreme Court trial. They obtained extra funding beyond the fees normally available on legal aid because the case was categorised as complex fraud. For the appeal, they've already been granted basic legal aid. But the lawyers appearing for the Marache brothers applied for extra funding, arguing it's still a complex fraud trial. Puny Judge Karen Prescott disagrees. She told the Supreme Court today that while the matter was originally classified as complex fraud, her view is that the position now is materially different. Mrs. Justice Prescott said the overt acts are not challenged, and therefore the issues that might arise in appeal are such that they could be raised in the context of any other defence, stating it's no longer a complex fraud or of exceptional difficulty. The judge said the Marache brothers should not be treated any worse than anyone else entitled to legal aid, but they are not to be treated any better.
An 11-gun salute signalled the start of the new Commander British Forces term on the Rock. Commodore Ian McGee officially took over from Commodore John Clink at a ceremony at the naval base on Tuesday morning. Speaking of the challenges ahead, he said he was confident of resolution as long as momentum was maintained and everyone worked together with a collegiate mindset.
Although a gun salute gives the impression of pomp and circumstance, today's ceremony at the Tower was very much a military, yet intimate affair. There were no outside dignitaries, and the emphasis was on the staff, family and friends. It was the official introduction to the new boss, who assumed command the minute the first shot was fired. Commodore Ian McGee congratulated the Royal Gibraltar Regiment for what he described as an immaculately executed gun salute. Speaking of the Rock, he said it was an iconic place steeped in history. Warmth radiates from the territory, along with, rightly so, he said, a fierce pride.
As I move forward to take over in my job, I'm aware that there are challenges, many challenges. But I think that if we maintain momentum with a collegiate mindset, we can make sure that we advance our issues together and make sure that we come with a decent resolution to them. Finally, I would like to say that I am pleased to be working with an eclectic team of military and civil servants. Doreen, my wife, and I have been made to feel very welcome here from all quarters, and I look forward to settling into life in Gibraltar. Thank you very much indeed.
It was then time for goodbyes. The Chief of Staff, Colonel John Powell, said the command appreciated Commodore Link's leadership and his efforts to have made Gibraltar relevant in the 21st century. For his part, Commodore Clink said he'd enjoyed himself tremendously.
Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Despite the English stiff upper lip and the uniform, the Commander of British Forces was pretty emotional as he said goodbye to his staff. Especially to she who'd organised his diary over the past 20 months. And so by the time he made it to HMS Scimitar with his wife and sons, Commodore Clink was just about holding it together, almost reluctant to step off the Rock.
Goodbye, Gibraltar. I'm sure I'll be back.
Welcomed on board by a crew member holding a bottle of champagne, the family waved goodbye as they set off to a promotion in Scotland. In the breeze, we could just about make out that Scimitar was playing Tina Turner's Simply the Best.
Also this week, much back and forth arguing over smoking between the government and the opposition, with the GST accusing the government of hypocrisy and double standards on its smoking ban policy. Acting party leader Damon Bocino said the government should come clean and admit it never intended to fulfill its commitment to a blanket ban on smoking in public places. Meanwhile, the government said it was looking forward to debating and airing these issues when the bill is brought before Parliament, but believes the opposition was misrepresenting the facts. There's more on this developing story on our website, gbc.gi. Now, Neanderthals captured, cooked and ate rock doves, the ancestors to the modern-day feral pigeon. This was announced by the Gibraltar Museum at a press conference on Thursday afternoon at the John Mackintosh Hall. The news is yet another landmark discovery by the museum team who've been researching this for quite some time. As the Gibraltar Museum continues its campaign for Gorham's Cave to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, today's news will, according to the museum's Clive Finlinson, certainly help bring that closer to reality. In the latest discovery, following a year and a half of research, almost 1,800 rock dove bones were examined with evidence of human intervention found in over 50% of cases. And as the pictures show in these extreme close-up shots of the bones the museum has been examining, cut marks made by Neanderthal tools can be seen.
Oh, they're fantastic because they bring the people who are sitting in that cave here in Gibraltar 60-odd thousand years ago, it brings them directly to us and we can relate exactly to the kinds of thing they were doing. They had this fire, they had the embers and they were getting the pigeons, they were obviously plucking them, putting them on the fire, roasting them and then peeling them, doing this kind of thing with the wings to eat them. We even find tooth imprints of the Neanderthals on the bones. It's fantastic. It's like you can connect almost, as a human directly with that kind of behavior.
During the press conference today, Museum Director Clive Finlinson expanded on what this meant and that incisions could be found on the wing, legs and sternum, where most of the meat was. Perhaps more incredibly, over 10% of bones showed signs of burning, meaning they were cooked, likely over embers, and a very low percentage, less than 1% in fact, showed evidence of carnivore gnawing and bird of prey digestion, meaning Neanderthals primarily certainly enjoyed a plentiful diet of rock doves, ancestors to the modern-day feral pigeon. How they caught them, we don't know, but this is another area the museum is investigating, as well as what other animals they ate.
Well, in the consumption side, we're looking at what they're eating. We want to look at the other species of birds. 150 species have been found in the cave, and we want to know if it's the Neanderthals that are responsible. It wouldn't surprise me from what we had so far, but we have to prove it. And in a place like Gibraltar, which concentrates the migration between Europe and Africa, it's perhaps not surprising that they should be exploiting this resource. But we're also going to look at rabbits. There's a lot of rabbits there, and again, we think that they're probably exploiting them. And if we do show that, as well as the pigeon, what it's showing is that these people had a very sustainable resource exploitation strategy, because the pigeon reproduces the year round, produces a lot of offspring. You're unlikely to exhaust it as a food supply. So perhaps, we're overturning this idea that they would hunt the large mammals. Those were probably occasionally on feast days, if you like, but the day-to-day supply of food was probably coming from smaller things. I'm sure plants, pigeons, maybe other birds, maybe rabbits.
The age of the bones, which the museum has had in its possession for a number of years now, dates back some 67,000 years, and it shows eating habits of the Neanderthals not known until now. Previous discoveries have seen them also enjoy a diet of seals, dolphins and shellfish. Now, this week marked 10 years since Gibraltar celebrated its tercentenary. Gibraltarians took to the streets on the 4th of August to link hands in the Encircling the Rock event that saw some 17,000 people form a human chain around the rock. When you consider prominent moments in Gibraltar's history, think back to 10 years ago today, and Gibraltar sending a message to the world, rather blatantly, that this was their homeland. The Encircling the Rock event took 8 months to plan, and not everyone was convinced that it would work. But when the day came, Gibraltarians showed up in their thousands.
Somebody worked out all the run around the rock, and we needed 12,000 plus. On the actual day, we recorded over 17,000 Gibraltarians who went out into the street to prove that Gibraltar was not only British, but it belonged to the Gibraltarian. That is what sticks out in my mind. You know, we didn't have any trouble, we didn't have any arguments, we didn't have anything except that we said at 10:15 we want everybody to join hands, and they did.
In some places there were lines of 2s and 3s because of the amount of people that had come out
unexpectedly.
Back then, before social media took hold of society, word of mouth spread around the Rock and people were encouraged to turn up, donning the national red and white colours to stand for 15 minutes in a show of solidarity. It's fair to say that these were less tense times than now, and organisers of the event are convinced that were such an event organised now, with a frustrated population dealing with queues at the border and the news of incursions out in the bay, even more would take to the streets and hold hands.
People now feel themselves stronger attachment to Gibraltar. They feel it is more theirs, and the present condition or political condition at the time, I think they would even go further. And instead of saying, look, let's go for a quarter an hour, let's go for half an hour, it doesn't make any difference. You know, it's just a question under the present feeling that we are being ostracized by Spain or whatever it is. They would just say no, let's tell them that we are still here and we're going to stay here.
The celebration of 300 years of British rule, yes, but this was more about a community taking a stand and letting the world know about it, and that they did. The story was covered in news outlets around the world, from Spain to the UK, the United States and further afield. A special session of the then House of Assembly saw tercentenary and freedom of the city motions, Gibraltar celebrating the past, but very much with a view of looking towards the future. No doubt a day many will look back on fondly with their own memories and photographs that were captured in a book created in 2005, still available today, with people sharing their individual photos celebrating the occasion. Also this week, we found out that the National Week Classical Concert will be held on Monday the 1st of September at St. Michael's Cave. A set of 7 stamps depicting endemic flowers of Gibraltar was issued, and we learned that Superman himself, actor Henry Cavill, will be on the Rock in October to take part in the Rock Run as the Royal Marines celebrate their 350th anniversary. For the rest of this week's news, you can head over to our website, gbc.gi/news. Of course, tune into Radio Gibraltar and GBC Television throughout the week for the very latest local news. And you can also follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching. From the team, good night.